Hello, chemistry students. What we're going to talk about today is something called feedback. So there are basically two kinds of feedback, and each of them have two different names. So before we get into those details, the first thing I want to do is have you study these two pictures. So the one that I have here labeled as feedback number 1 is an example of Amazon rainforest die-off. And this is a picture of trees that are in the Amazon rainforest that are burning and obviously dying. So they're clearing out the area, quite possibly for use as farmland. And anyway, according to our picture, we have in the black box that temperatures rise, drought and wildfires increase, more trees die and decompose or burn, releasing carbon dioxide. And that carbon dioxide is going into our atmosphere, which you may remember is a greenhouse gas. And if we follow the arrow around towards the left, it says that fewer rainforest trees mean less water is pumped into the atmosphere, and rainfall decreases, and we have more drought and wildfires that increase as the temperatures rise. And then the other thing that I want you to notice here is that this dotted line shows us that as more carbon dioxide, that greenhouse gas, is released into the atmosphere, our temperatures are going to rise. And then we just keep going through that pattern with this other little loop happening off to the side. So that is feedback number 1. Take a look at feedback number 2. Feedback number 2 begins here with our thermometer and our globe, and our thermometer is showing us that our temperature is going up. And notice here that the ice is melting. This is relating to the polar ice caps that start to melt. And what happens is that as the ice turns into liquid, we get evaporation of water molecules at the surface of our oceans that are now going to increase the amount of water vapor that our atmosphere is holding. And when those molecules of water start to condense, we get cloud formation. And when we get cloud formation, we get sunlight being blocked from reaching our Earth's surface. That's what our picture here is showing us. And the end result is that our temperature decreases. So those are two different kinds of feedback loops. And I think that if we were going to take a look, let me try and get both of them in the same picture here. If we were going to take a look at the similarities and the differences between these two, we would definitely be able to find them. And so let's just put a couple of similarities here on the side. So similarities between these two, I think, would include that they both have arrows. They're both kind of pointing in like a circular motion. But by the same token, we also have some differences that are going on between these two. For instance, our loop number 1 doesn't have a clear beginning or a clear end. And also feedback number 2 involves a correction. The end result is opposite to what started the loop in the first place. And so if you take a look at feedback 2, here's what I'm talking about. Here was the start where we had our Earth's temperature going up, and then this is the end where you have the temperature going down. So basically, the end result is opposite or countering what we actually started with. Okay, so let me blow this back up again. All right, so for the next page now, we're going to try to define those two kinds of feedbacks. One thing to remember is that Earth's systems are connected by change. That a change in one of Earth's systems, like the water cycle, the rock cycle, the amount of greenhouse gases that are in our atmosphere, a change in one of those is going to cause a domino effect. It's going to change others on down the line. So they are all connected by change. Another thing that I highlighted here that I think is really important because students confuse this a lot. Feedback loops are not measures of good or bad outcomes. You see, feedback loops are often defined as being positive feedback loops or negative feedback loops. And like positive and negative, it's not about like a good thing or a bad thing. It's about the outcome. Does the outcome augment the starting event, or does it counter the starting event? So let's take a look at that. Our picture that we have here on the left is an example of reinforcing or positive feedback. And this is what reinforcing or positive feedback loops do. They amplify the effect of a change from previous conditions. And so if we take a look at our picture of the loop that we have here, you'll notice that we have don't sleep enough in two different places. And if you don't sleep enough, you become more tired, which gives you a worse mood, where you make worse decisions, your health goes down, and then maybe you're not sleeping because you're not feeling well, and then you become more tired, and it just spirals on and on and on out of control. So what's happening here is that this not sleeping enough is going to amplify or emphasize the effects of a change. Like it's going to continually worsen until you do something to stop it. On the other side, we have a counterbalancing or a negative feedback example. Counterbalancing or negative feedback diminishes change in order to maintain a balance. Now, most of our counterbalancing or negative feedback examples are present even in our own bodies because we want to maintain a constant body environment in order for our molecules and our cells to work well. So this one here is kind of taking a look at our body temperature. And so here in the middle, you can see that the student has a normal body temperature, but then let's say that they walk into the classroom and the windows were left open and it's below 0 and then body temperature decreases. Well, the body now is going to shiver, and the contraction of those muscles are going to generate heat inside of the body, causing the body temperature to go up, and then we go back to normal. So this is an example of counterbalancing or negative feedback. Our decrease in body temperature has been countered by an increase in body temperature. We can even look at it in the other direction, like this is probably going to be happening to us as time goes on here in the springtime. But here we have our student, you feel normal until you get into chemistry class and it's so hot. And so your body is going to sweat, because when that sweat evaporates from your skin, heat from your skin is also dissipating into the atmosphere, and that's what allows you to feel more cool and decrease your body temperature so that you can feel normal again, like our student in the center of the picture. So as, again, this is another example of counterbalancing or negative feedback where something happens and it is countered or reversed in order to maintain a happy balance, which is what we want to see with our student in the middle of the picture. Okay, so knowing that, we're going to go back up to feedback number 1 and feedback number 2. And let's look at our question that we have down here at the bottom. It says feedback number 1 on page 1 is an example of, is it reinforcing / positive feedback, or is it counterbalancing / negative feedback? Well, let's come on back up and take a look here. Well, here we have our temperatures rising, causing drought, more trees die. Fewer rainforest trees means that less water is pumped into the atmosphere, so there's a decrease in rainfall, and that is going to cause more drought. And then more trees die, and then we have even less water pumped into the atmosphere, and then the temperatures are going to rise even more. And then look at what's happening here. We get more carbon dioxide being continuously pumped into the atmosphere. Folks, feedback 1 is an example of reinforcing / positive feedback. Now, feedback number 2, as I have circled in purple here, notice that the issue that starts is being countered at the end. So the effect of our beginning change is being diminished at the end. Since we have opposite movements, the start, the temperature goes up, and the temperature goes down at the end, this is an example of counterbalancing or negative feedback. And I think that a really important part of this word, counterbalancing, that is exactly what negative feedbacks do. They are going to attempt to provide balance, whether it's to the outside environment or to the internal environment of your body, or even there's a lot of different economics examples as well of negative feedback. And so negative feedback is going to have a balancing effect. The other name for negative feedback is counterbalancing. So now let's come on back down to our questions here. So we said that number 1 was reinforcing or positive feedback, and we said that number 2 is counterbalancing / negative feedback. Okay, now I wanted to jump to something that's called a climate forcing. Climate forcings are factors that drive the climate. They are also going to impact Earth's systems because they cause these feedbacks to occur. And if one climate forcing happens, then Earth's surface temperature will increase. The 3 climate forcings are if there is an increase in incoming solar radiation, which is also known as insolation, then Earth's surface temperature will increase. If there is a decrease in the amount of sunlight reflected by the Earth's surface, meaning that the Earth's surface is absorbing more of it, then yes, Earth's surface temperature will increase. And the last forcing is if it increases how much energy is kept by greenhouse gases in the atmosphere, then yes, Earth's surface temperature is going to go up. So if something happens in the environment that causes one of these things to happen, then Earth's temperature will increase. Okay, now on your paper, you have a link to an albedo and positive feedback video. So I would like you to please watch that. It's just 2 minutes and 7 seconds, so it's not long. I just wanted you to see that albedo does play a role in positive feedbacks in our environment. Once you're done with that video, then I would like you to go back to our Canvas calendar and click on the activity explaining black and white paper with feedback loops. You are able to work on your own. You can work with a partner, or if you wanted to gather in the back of the lab and work with your lab group at your lab table, I'm totally fine with that as well. However, this is a score that's going to go into the gradebook, so be sure to submit your work at the end of class, and make sure that you're checking that calendar, because it's going to tell you what the homework is for tonight and for the rest of the week. I hope to see you guys soon. Enjoy your day. Bye-bye.